This post will be of interest to all my fellow revolutionaries. There's only one crime expressly defined in the US Constitution: treason. Nothing else. Our founders had what you might call an intimate knowledge of treason, because they were all at one point, in open rebellion against the King of England. Of course, we all know what they really were: patriots. So anywho, they defined treason very specifically in the Constitution. They knew how damaging it could be to be perceived as treasonous, intimately. So they took pains to define what treason means. According to Article 3, Section 3, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution, treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of two witnesses to the same overt act or on confession in open court. So anyone who takes up arms against the government is considered a traitor and is guilty of one of very few federal offenses eligible for the death penalty. I think it's curious that for an act to be treasonous, it has to be in support of our nation's enemies. The framers apparently never suspected that a supposed ally or even a client state could be a threat. Because you know what isn't considered treason? Taking money from another country to make U.S. laws that benefit that other country. Not only is that not considered treason, it's not considered bribery either. Bribery has essentially been legalized by conservative majorities on the Supreme Court in 1976, 1978, and most famously, Citizens United in 2010. As writer Tom Hartman points out, what used to be considered bribery is now considered free speech. In fact, the Supreme Court is preparing to take another bite at the apple in a case called Snyder versus the U.S. that could legalize tipping public officials after they pass laws. No joke. Check it out. Now, if I told you there was a large collection of U.S. representatives and senators who were taking money from China to make laws favorable to that country at the expense of American citizens, would that piss you off? I would be upset. That's not right. We shouldn't allow our legislators to put the interests of another nation before our own. Representing the United States is the main job of every congressman of every stripe. We must stop politics at the water's edge, said Republican Senator Art Vandenberg to Democratic President Harry Truman. The idea is both major political parties are ultimately supposed to be more loyal to the nation itself than any party. The nation itself. That is the team that every Democrat and every Republican ultimately plays for. USA, right? So it turns out one of the biggest lobbying organizations in Washington doesn't actually work for China. They work for Israel. AIPAC is the name of the organization, and the reason it exists is to pass American laws that are favorable to Israel. Go check out AIPAC's own website if you don't believe me. They say it quite openly. It's not a secret. So, as you probably suspected, it turns out that our legislators are all for sale to the highest bidder, even if that high bidder is sitting in another country like Israel. Joe Biden, Donald Trump, the Clintons, the Bushes, Barack Obama, they all took AIPAC money too. To be fair, sometimes it's not a bribe, it's a threat. If an American legislator ever considers voting in a way that Israel doesn't like, AIPAC will use its considerable influence to try and destroy them, like they did with Congressman Jim Moran in 2002 when he voted against going to war in Iraq. Every member of Congress makes a constitutional oath of allegiance to the United States. And then, most of them proudly take money from AIPAC to ensure that Israel gets proper representation in our legislature. If a congressman took money from Russia to make laws that were more favorable to Russia, that person would probably be called a traitor. But when the country is Israel, well, Israel's practically as American as Michigan, right? To summarize again, it's not treason to take a bribe from another country. It's certainly treacherous. I think it's probably also a betrayal of that oath of office. But don't worry, it's all legal, so it must be okay. But if you were looking for an example of how rotten and corrupt our American political system has become, I think it would be hard to come up with a clearer example. American politicians bought and paid for by other foreign governments. So what exactly are we supposed to do about it? Well, I think it makes sense to use our votes to protest this situation. We certainly shouldn't vote for any politician who takes money from AIPAC or any other organization that asks our legislatures to put the interests of another foreign government before our own. Make your vote count by rejecting anyone who breaks faith with the citizens of the United States in this way. Let's make them pay.